Okay, so as Hashem, we jump back in to Likutei Moharan Torah Ches. And yesterday we did only a short amount, but it was an important little surgery to have to do. Went in a little bit sharply, but sometimes that's necessary. And I think also, interestingly enough, yesterday was like the sharpest I've spoken maybe ever in certain ways, but also in other ways it was the most Gemara oriented I've ever spoken. You know, we really clarified the crucial importance of learning Gemara and how central it is and how important it is, and everything should be done hopefully in as right a way as we possibly can do it. And we spoke just bekitzer, really we spoke about getting to a place of being able to be mafresh the ra mi'atoiv, right? Like to get to the place of the tzaddik gamor, the person who's really gotten rid of all the ra, so to speak, to the extent that a human being can. And that, said the Rebbe, comes from limud haTorah and tefillah, or limud haTorah that's influenced by a person's tefillah consciousness. And the Rebbe explained that the way that we do that is through the gan, which is the Torah, that's in Eden, having an open channel of the Nahar, of that river that flows from Eden and draws it down to the Gan, that channel should be open. And Eden is Chochmah, which is associated with prayer, because the pasuk says ki umayan mi beis Hashem yetze, right? That river, that Nahar flows forth from the beis Hashem, and we know that ki beisi beis tefillah. And so a prayerful consciousness that sits beyond a person's interest in learning Gemara, in learning Halacha, is for the purpose of a person who's trying to get closer to Hashem, clearly that it's part of a relational experience. And that's what tefillah is, right? And it's with the humility of wanting really to be transformed. And that kind of learning, says the Rebbe, is naturally going to end up in a person who actually wants to learn, not just for the intellectual stimulation, but that they should bring it lo'uvdo l'maisa, right? That they should bring it to learn halacha brura, right? And we said that that's really the tikkun and the avodah of limud haTalmud, limud haGemara, Talmud Bavli, the inyan of Chayshech, is to make it through all the way till we get to a place of clarity, and that's until we can get to the psak, and that's working through Safik and working through sugyas where it's not super clear what the psak is, and then you work it through and you get to Klali Psak, and then you make it to Shulchan Aruch and to Rambam, you know, and to the Rif, and you make it through to Halacha L'maisa, and that's ultimately the way that we're trying to learn. And says the Rebbe, when we can do that, so then we're able to get to a place where in our own midos we're able to separate the ra from the taiv, and we're oriented toward not just the world of intermediate world between koyach and payal, but right, potential and actuality, but we're able to mamish bring it out b'payal. And that was the connection between Torah and tefillah. Tefillah is the world of koyach, because tefillah goes into the energy, into the engine rather, of the world where creation isn't yet solidified and anything can change. And that's what tefillah is. We believe there's a mechadesh and we can daven, and in that place Hashem can change everything. Torah is koyach b'payal. I'm not koyach b'payal, bria rather b'payal. That would be very confusing. Torah is bria b'payal. Right, it's the creation in actuality from the standpoint of the world being created out of the letters of the Torah, and ultimately, if a person has both, and a person is triggering down megadoses of Hashem's presence in his life through prayer, especially through spoddos, right, and through a tefillah, shacharis ben chamarav, that's influenced by the experience of his spoddos, that personal connection to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, memela, that's going to trigger that river, that nahar, that's yotze me'eden, and it's flowing down the hashkes as a gan, and that person's experience of Torah, and that person's experience of limud haGemara, and limud haPoskim, and lilmud l'lamed, and lishmer v'las, is the accomplishment of that kind of lifestyle, is going to be full of vitality, is going to be full of effervescence, is going to be full of life, and growth in the way that it's supposed to be. All right, so that's really what we learned yesterday. Let's turn the page over. Now we're up to page Yud Amud Beis. And the tzaddik over here says, well, now we can understand once we've connected these two concepts of the aspect of nahar we've identified with tefillah, and gan we've identified with Torah, and the relationship between the two. Which, by the way, just to point out, is the third time already in our learning that we're talking about the connection between Torah and tefillah, right? Because it was in Torah Aleph we talked about how in order for tefillah to be niskal, we need Torah. And then Torah Beis, we learned that in order for our Torah to be strong, we need tefillah, right? And over here also we're learning about the relationship between Torah and tefillah, both of which fall on the kava and sai that all of Rebbe Nachman is focused on this middle line, right? Tiferes being Torah, Malchus being tefillah, and the interconnectivity and the relationship between them. Once we've discussed that connection, now we can understand so we learned that part of the pasuk, but then the pasuk continues with Misham Yipar v'hayla arba rashim. Then it split off and it became 4 heads, right? It became 4 different primary rivers, and the pasukim go on to explain what those 4 rivers were. Says the Eden, hu bechinas hatfila. Eden, we said, is the aspect of prayer. Ki Eden ayin le'rasa, because no eye has ever seen Eden, right? Eden ayin le'rasa. And that's the aspect of tefillah, because it is the place where no eye has ever seen, right? Because tefillah relates to bria b'koyach. That's not the world that we could see. That's called the alma de iskasi. It's the hidden realm. So because it's beyond nature, it's beyond the physical world, it's beyond the perceptible world that we can encounter and experience. Because like we said, tefillah enables a person to change nature. And that's the realm of Eden. That's described by Chazal as being ayin le'rasa. No eye has ever seen Eden. Right? Because that which is beyond nature, we have no concept of. We can have some kind of experience of, like we learned in Torah Dalit, but we have no tefisa in it. So this is pshat in the pasuk. V'nahar yoytze me'Eden. The river flows forth from Eden. Hainu atfila, me'atfila, right? Umayan mibeis Hashem yetze. That's the energy of prayer, and a person who's a prayerful person is lahashkes hagan, who atara k'niskalel is coming to water the gan, right, which is Mayan Ganim, and then it becomes a river that's within the garden. And just to clarify again, to be mamtik a little bit, even though I stand by every single thing I said yesterday, and I'm willing to have a conversation with anybody who's interested in and as some people have reached out to me, I stand by every word that I said. I don't take back af ot echat. But I want to be mamtik and to say, of course, right, we're generalizing, Sheba generalizing. This is not a comment on the yeshiva world. This is not a comment. This is a comment on a potential risk that can sometimes exist, as there are dangers if you go too much to the extreme, like we said yesterday at the end of the shiur, which I thought was very important, to go to the side of Chasidus Pnimius Tefillah. There are dangers to go too much to the extreme of Torah, Nigla, and so on. And it's not a comment on anybody, it's not a comment on any system, it's not a comment on anything. It's just trying to point out and to warn against what can be potential pitfalls, and the limud zchus is that everything I said doesn't exist, and it's not true at all, even though I happen to know that in some isolated cases it does absolutely exist, but let's pretend that it doesn't exist at all, and every Yid is shining and holy and perfect and pure. But Torah hi v'lo marani tzarech. We have to understand what the Rebbe is saying, and so just of course everybody has this, right, to varying degrees, and we're all a work in progress, and I'm very, very distant from perfection in every way myself, but we're journeying, and we have to know what the goals are, and we have to know what the pitfalls are and the potholes are along the road. Very, very important. So this is Yotzim Eid Lahashkes Hagan. And when that river flows forth from Chochmah, which again is tefillah, which is true Chochmah, right? And especially he's using the word Chochmah, I think very particularly because Chochmah vis-a-vis Binah, like we've already learned, is the big picture vis-a-vis the details, right? Remember? So Chochmah is the aspect of the big picture, and Tefillah is very Chochmah oriented. Tefillah is all leaning to the aspect of Harabayis, because that's really what he's saying. V'nar yotzeh me'ed, and which is the aspect of V'nar mi beis Hashem yetze, or Mayan mi beis Hashem yetze, which is the aspect of Ki beisi beis Tefillah. So that whole inyan is Chochmah oriented. And that's also connected in a certain way with what we learned in Torah Zayin about the Igulim and the Yosher. This is another thing that falls within that system of polarities, right? And that the side of Igulim is the side of Chochmah. That's the Igul. It's the big picture. It's the master plan, right? That's the concept of tshuva. It's all Chochmah energy. Har Sinai is Binah energy, right? And it's much more square, and you can look at each detail at a time, and the master plan breaks down, so to speak, into particularities, right? And so he's using very specifically the word Chochmah and the linkage between Chochmah and Tefillah. That's the Nahar that's Yotzeh me'Eden, V'kasher nimshach mayana chochmah me'atfila elagan, right? And when that mayan of chochmah is flowing forth from tefillah in order to water and to cultivate the garden, Shua Torah, as I Yisrubiu, Savim Udushan, then mamish, our neshamas are activated through our Libana Torah, and we grow and we flourish. Nishmas Yisrael, the souls of Am Yisrael, Kolemar, Shegedelim Ba'agan, they grow through the Torah, Umevinim, Umaskilim Ba'Torah, and they understand it, and they see things in a system, and they see a master plan, and they see a bigger picture, and they have clarity in what it means to be a Jew. And then they're more likely to desire the liman of halacha, because then they really want a relationship with Hashem, and they're not sufficing just with the learning of it, but they want to really do it. Right? Right? These 6 different elements connected the Shishay Sidrei Mishnah working through. And what happens then, says the Rebbe, that if a person is connected to this kind of learning, through this kind of davening, that's going to bring a person to potentially become the tzaddik gomer that we're speaking about. So says the Rebbe, that's what the end of the pasuk means. Umisham yipared. Meaning, ki al yedei zeh nifarid hara me'arbi yisaydos. The shurach ma'im afar, the aspect of mashbor shama, the aret, from there, that's going to get away from a person. A person's not going to be struggling with these 4 things. And all that will exist within those is the taif, right? Is the holy oxygen that's coming forth from Yud Kei Vav Kei. La'arba rashim. Then you will only have the 4 rashim. Says the Rebbe, that word vahaya is Yud, Hey, Vav, and Hey. Le'arba rashim, which are the 4 primary categories from which is nishtalsha later on in the system, right, of the chain of emanation, much later on, it becomes a shurach ma'im afar. But all that will be distant, all the person will have, umisham yipared, right, that the ra will be mafrid itself from the person, just like that person has worked through the ra me'atoiv, and the person's come to clarity in halacha, and all that will be left is vahaya, yud kei vav kei, la'arba rashim. Right, the primary 4, what the Ramchal calls in the beginning of Adar Bamarim, the Seder HaKlali. Yud Kei Vav Kei is the Seder HaKlali. All the other Arba, like I said on the chat, and the guy, I think he posted his sweet, posted on the discussion group, his link, which if anybody's not on the discussion group, we're happy to share it, but it's incredible. He has 60 different sets of 4 throughout all of Torah thought. It's incredible. So, and the Ramchal, and I told him this when we were speaking, the Ramchal says that if you want to know the primary set of 4 is Yud Kei Vav Kei. He says it's the Seder HaKlali. So it's the Arba Rashim. It's the primary 4. I know Arba Oisi is Havaya. Sheim Shayr Shatayim Shala Arba Yisaitis. They are the root and goodness of the Arba Yisaitis. And if a person can separate from oneself the 4 Yisaitis, the Tumah, right, and a person can get out of the Eish Rachmaim Afar with all of their associated negative traits, all that will be left, right, is after Misham Yipared, all that will be left is the Arba Rashim. And how do you get to Misham Yipared, which was our question, and the answer is Nahar Yotze Me'ed Lahashkas Sakan. You need an experience of Liman HaTorah that's coming forth from the Tefillah experience. Says the Yeliger Rebbe, he introduces one more concept. I told you, Zayin and Ches is absolutely connected. It just flows one into the other. This is the 4 tzitzis. Right? If you remember, in Zayin, we also learned about the tzitzis. Remember, from the standpoint of the distinction between the Atzas HaTzadik and the Atzas HaRasha, right, the Atzas Nachash, which was an aspect of Niyuv, you remember? And that's why we needed tzitzis, because tzitzis is a tikkun, right, for Pegam HaBris, right? And over here, it's the same thing. Because over here, Viter, we're not necessarily speaking about the Eitzah of the Tzadik and the Eitzah of the Rasha, but we absolutely are, because we're speaking about the Ruach of the Tzadik and the Ruach of the Rasha, which is the same thing. It's a Todavar, right? Now the Rebbe is getting into the Ma'amakim of what did we mean when we said the Eitzah of the Tzadik, the Eitz of the Rasha, and the answer is we're talking about the Ruach, and the Ruach brings us back to the beginning of Torah Zayin, where we talked about the consciousness of Geulah or Galus, right? Which is the aspect of the aspect of nisim, right, or teva. It's all one thing. So in Zion and Ches you see it mamish, connected. It's like one long thing. The whole Likutei Moharan is one long thing, but over here you really see it. In order, let's say, v'zebachinas arba tzitzis. This is the aspect of the 4 tzitzis. Ki arba tzitzis emechinas ruach chayim, because tzitzis is the aspect of the ruach for life. So when it says in Yecheskel, the dry bones, Kai Amar Hashem, Hakadosh Baruch Hu said, Me arba ruchais boy haruach. The ruach comes forth from the 4 ruchais. Ruchais are directions, right? But the ruach will come forth from the 4 directions. It will come from all the sides of the world. And the 4 sides of the world, what's the Indian of 4 sides? Me arba ruchais. Well, that's our tzitzis that we have on each of the directions, on each of the sides of the 4-dimensional reality of the square. Shal yedei zemachniyin haruach sa'ara. Again, just like we said in Zion, that tzitzis help protect a person against the atzas harasha. It's the same thing. It protects a person against the ruach, right? That's coming from the sitra achra, from the rav de klipa. Shu ruach shalom isnagdim. Right, and so here the Rebbe again, he's using much more particular language. So like people are attacking me, that sometimes I'm a little critical. You can't get away from it. The Svarim spoke very, very clearly. I'm being even nicer than the Rebbe, and I'm saying we're not talking about Jews. The whole time I said we're not talking about a Rav, an actual Rav. We're not talking. So I stand by that. I think for our dar we have to only say good things, as much as we can. But yeah. He'd say there's no way about it. I don't know. Yeah, right, exactly.
Is he referring here to misnagdim as we know of as misnagdim chasidim, or just?
I mean, cholkem al tzadikim amitim. Those who are arguing against the true tzadikim. I don't know, a better way to be mamtik this. And if you think this is bad, just wait till you get to Torah Yud Beis, which is a Torah that I've never even dared attempt to teach before. And I was worried even from the beginning, how am I going to teach Torah Yud Beis without getting myself into major trouble? So we'll see then. I don't know. We'll figure it out. Yeah, I guess. Whoops. So, Yud Gimel. You're going to see, this is, so, but again, you have to see this within the context of all of the other teachings from Rabbeinu HaKadosh, which are all about seeing the good and the holiness of every Jew. So, you understand, you have to recognize on what level we're speaking, and with what compassion we're speaking, with what hope and yearning we're speaking, and etc., etc. So,
and the context of how strong the machlokas was there.
Nachon, exactly, and what was going on. But, okay, so it's probable that it doesn't apply today. And if it applies, I say let it apply to non-Jews, not to Yidden. Those that are. So I would say again over here, it's not those that are arguing against the tzaddikim. I would say those whose whole life is oriented against the ruach of the tzaddik. Let's say, and that's mamish amalek. That's not a Jewish thing. That's the satan. That's the satan. Shemam shicha merichas aruch shalom me'arav de klipa. Where they're drawing, and I said it's not talking about rabbanim b'chas v'shams. Even though whatever it meant literally, but I'm saying, let's say for us, it means the secular culture. Rav de klipa. Shebechinas Esav ish sa'ir kanal. That's coming from the world of Esav. V'al kain tzitzis hu lashon sei'ar. So tzitzis you also find is an aspect of sei'ar, which is an aspect in the beginning of ruach sa'ara. Remember, because sin and samach are interchangeable. And about Esav it says that he was an ish sa'ir. Right, and that's the aspect of the ruach sa'ara, of the ruach of the rav de klipa, the alufei Esav, the yeshli rav of Esav. K'masher kasav vayikacheni b'tzitzis roishi. The pasuk says, he took me b'tzitzis roishi by the fringes of my head, which is of course a reference to hair. Hair is sei'ar, sei'ar is sa'ara. Right, so and tzitzis is the aspect of the hair, and so so you see that tzitzis is counteracting the aspect of the ruach sa'ara, because tzitzis is sei'ar is sa'ara, and sa'ara is the ruach sa'ara. Ki al yadam nichna Esav ish sa'ir. Through tzitzis is the counteraction of the aspect of the Esav ish sa'ir. Bechinas ruach sa'ara keniskal el. V'zeh bechinas talis lavan. This is the aspect of the white talis that Chazal tell us, the Gemara in Rosh Hashanah Daf Yud Zayin Amud Beis, shenis'at of HaKadosh Baruch Hu v'sideh shlosh esrei mitos. That when HaKadosh Baruch Hu revealed the Yud Gimel midas of Rachamim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu wore a talis lavan. He cloaked himself in a white talis. What's the kesher? Ki ashlosh esrei midas and v'chinas uruach ha'chaim v'kedusha k'niskala el. The 13 midas of rachamim, like we mentioned yesterday, are the aspect of, or I think 2 days ago actually, are the aspect of this whole tikkun, and we'll do it very quickly. We said Hashem Kel Racham Echan, and Erech HaPayim. Erech HaPayim is a long breath. That's the inyan of the krechs with which we began the Ruach Chaim, right? That deep breath that we take. The Erech HaPayim. Where does the Erech HaPayim come from? The Rav Chesed. It comes from the Tzadikim Amitim who are channeling down to us Emunah Tahira and an intimate, direct relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That they are Rav Chesed because they're counteracting the Yeshli Rav that was said by Esav, that he has a Rav also, and Esav is of course the Klip of Gevurah. So the Tzadikim are going to be the Rav Chesed, right? They're counteracting that. So Erech HaPayim v'Rav Chesed. Where did the Tzadik get that aspect of Rav Chesed? Erech HaPayim, and the answer is ve'emes. He got it from the Torah. And from that aspect of the Rav Chesed ve'emes and the Erech HaPayim that we're getting from the Rav Chesed and his connection with the Ruach Elikim Rachavis Al Panei Hamayim, which is a reference to the Torah, and the Ruach Tzfainis that's Menasheves Al the Kinar Shel David, right? Which is the aspect of also the Ruach of the Torah. Memela Noitzer Chesed LaAlafim. That enables this aspect of Chesed, because the Tzaddik's whole thing is Hashem's Chesed, and Olam Chesed Yibana, and finding HaKadosh Baruch Hu's Chesed in everything. That's the Das of Torah, of Torah Dalit, right? The aspect of Chasadim and Gevuras, to be able to mamtik, right? And the inyan of clapping, like you said, and finding the Chesed in the Gevura, etc., etc. Be mamtik all the dinim. That's the consciousness of the Tzaddik and the Tzaddikin. Memela Noitzer Chesed, that aspect of Chesed will respond Noitzer la'alafim. What was the alafim? Remember? Alufei Esav. Right? To respond to the Alufei Esav. And that's the Yud Gimel Midas of Rachamim that came about Dafka through Moshe Rabbeinu. That Moshe Rabbeinu was the Ruach of the Tzaddik that he channeled down to us and he brought into our consciousness the Yud Gimel Midas of Rachamim. Says the Rebbe, now we can understand why it was important for HaKadosh Baruch Hu to wear a talis, kivi, again, whatever this means, kiviyachol, when revealing the Yud Gimel Midas of Rachamim. V'zebechinas talis. Shaya arba knafos. That's the 4 sides of the talis. Bechinas haruach me'arba ruchos kinis gala'el. That's the spirit. That's the ruach. The erech hapayim. That's coming from the 4 ruchos. Behind the talis lavan. This is the aspect that had to be a white talis because that's hapich bechinas ruach de klipa bechinas esa. Because again, it's the counteraction. It's coming to contrast. It's coming to do battle, so to speak, with the Sarishal Esav, like Yaakov and Esav, coming to do battle with the Esav, that's a ruach of the Klipa. And what was Esav? Shuadmaini. That he was all red. Kula ka'aderes seyar. That the aspect of he had red hair. Hair, we said, is Sa'ir, is Sa'ara. That was his ruach Sa'ara. That ended up in the aspect of the Admaini, of the Esav Ish Sa'ir, was all red. And that's the aspect of Gevura. That's the Yeshli Rav. That's not the Rav Chesed. So the counteraction of this Admaini, of this Se'ar Ruach Sa'ar, this red hair, is going to be a talis, which is Ruach, right? And it's going to be Lava. It's Erech HaPayim, the Rav Chesed, right? Noitzer Chesed la'alafim. That's the white talis. White is always the aspect of chesed. Appears Rashi ketalis, kevalt. Rashi tells us on that pasuk, Shu'admaini kulak adar say. Rashi says ketalis daika, meaning Esav's talis is kulai red. It's the bechina, by the way, of Kairach, right? Who's coming to be cholik on the tzaddikim. That's the aspect of the misnagdim, right? And what was his nekuda? His nekuda was everybody should wear a talis kulai tcheles. Tcheles is the same inyan. It's not red, but it's the same inyan of Gevura. White is Chesed, and Tcheles is Gevura. That's why there are certain tzaddikim who are very, very, very makbid against wearing Tcheles in our time. Rav Kenik from Tzfas, even though there's huge Chalukei Deis in Breslov, and a lot of Breslevers wear, and which kind of Tcheles, these are not simple sugyas, but there are some who felt that could bring Gevura into some people's lives. Other people had no, Adarabba, it's mamtik the din, because including it within Chesed. But it's just good to know that generally Tcheles is Gevura. And so that's really what Kairach was connected to, this aspect of all Tcheles, right? Which is all red, which is all Gevura. Ketalis. Bechinas talis de klipa, right? That's like the talis like the klipa de ketalis. The other side, bechinas talis adam. That's not a white talis. Imagine a person comes to the shore and goes, a red talis. Scary, mamish. And by the way, It's not for nothing, that the Catholic Church, and all the whole color of red, how much blood red blood has been spilled throughout Jewish history in the name of the cardinals with the red. It's all Esav. You couldn't make this stuff up. Why didn't they choose, turquoise? Why didn't they choose, green, magenta? They could have chosen fuchsia. I don't know, for all I care is pink. They could have chosen any color in the world. Red. It's mamish Esav. It's mamish a shtalshlus of Esav. Shebechinas talis adam shemisham nimshach haruach shel risham kanal. That's the spirit of Gevura. V'al talis the kedusha shebechinas talis lavan. But by HaKadosh Baruch Hu's talis lavan that Hashem is wearing in the context of revealing the Yud Gimel Midas of Rachamim, which is Hashem Kal Racham Achanon, the Rachmanos of Erech Apayim that comes from the Rav Chesed, that comes from Ve'emes, that is Notzeh Chesed, that's responding la'alafim. Machnian, I say, that's subjugating the talis of the admoni of Esav. Kimisham nimshach ruach chaim de kedusha. That from there we're drawing our ruach chaim de kedusha, the bechina of tzitzis, right? The bechina of atzas atzadik, right? The bechina of the hevech of adultery, which is idolatry. Shu bechina shloisha sumida shel racham uknes kalael. And therefore, Kodesh Baruch Hu b'talis lavan daika. That's why Kodesh Baruch Hu is specifically wearing the talis lavan. And then he's revealing the Yud Gimel Midas, which are all an expression of this energy. And he adds another element, talis of kedusha is a bechina of makif. Right? We know that the talis katan is a bechina of pnim. That's why a person is able to wear a talis katan in the restroom, right? It's an imminent kedusha. It's the kedusha that's in this world. It's a kedusha of teva kiviyachol. It's the shechina. It's that which is hidden within, right? And it's the shechina that's already in the bathroom. So you're not bringing anything new. That's the energy of the talis katan. The talis gadol is the ar makif. Ar makif is the inin of l'malam and teva. Ar makif. That's a familiar word. What does makif mean? What does the word makif mean? To surround. Where have we been learning about surrounding? The igulim. Igulim is the inin of Emunah. Emunah is the bechina of the Samach. Samach is the bechina of Ba'ar Bayit. You see, so all the way down, it's the talis of Chesed, because the talis is in and of itself the symbol for Igulim. It's the symbol for the bechina of the Chochmah, of the tefillah-oriented mind space that's able to bring a person into Emunah, that the pasuk says, Ve'emunascha svivoisecha, which is the bechina of the egla from Torah Zion, right? That cav, right? That was an egla, and the Rebbe said egla is igulim, because he stands between Tahaim and Tahaim, right? You remember the Torah Zion? That egla that's bridging the gap between the upper nisim, the lower nisim, helping people get to a place of ateyim kalair, to be in a state of wonder, in a state of amazement, and to just appreciate every minute of life, that it should be mind-blowing, the revelation of godliness in every second of our experience. The ups and the downs, Torah Vav. You have to keep on going back. It's all one consciousness. Says the Rebbe, incredibly, if everybody can mute on the chat, if possible, please mute. Thank you so much. This is the aspect of makif, and the Rebbe connects it locally as well. Shebechinas ruach chaim, because ruach chaim is also an aspect of makif. But bechinas, the pasuk in Kehal says, soivev hoylech haruach. Unbelievable. In a completely different place, in a completely different sefer, the Rebbe finds a pasuk, and he had this on his fingertips. The Rebbe sees a pasuk where there's a reference to ruach in the context of igulim. Soivev. And that, in the Rebbe's vast mind, connects with the talis lavan that has 4 ruchais, so it's also connected to ruchais. That is makif, right? That's surrounding HaKadosh Baruch Hu kiviyachol when Hashem is revealing the Yud Gimel Midas of Rachamim, which are all the energy of igulim, which is all the energy of the tzaddik that's coming to reveal the circular hanhaga of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which is the malam and ateva. It's the saga of tshuva.
So you've got arba kamfos, which is the detail and the square, but then the esatef, you turn it into
a circle.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Geval. You're saying to a talis, in a certain sense, the arba ruchas begin as a square, but then when you put on the talis, it turns into an eagle. Jeremy. Such a gift. Amazing. And you can also say, by the way, that going in that vein, just chidushim, is not really what we're doing here, but just going back to what we said, me'ar baruchas bai haruach, you can say that it's the merging of duality, right? Me'ar baruchas bai haruach, right? Meaning that pasuk itself expresses the coming together of the four corners into one inyan of ruach, and that's what the tzaddik is helping us do, right? It's to bring all the experiences of gevura, bina, duality, Torah, right, into tefillah. Gewaldig. And of course, as we're going to get to in the second chelik of Likutei Moharan, that's the whole inyan by Rebbe Nachman that he revealed as a brand new Geulah of turning Torah into tefillah. And the whole Likutei Tefillas, if anybody's been saying the Likutei Tefillas on the Torah, highly recommended. Right after we finish the Torah to learn tefillah, that's because Rebbe Nachman was the first one to bring into the world. I mean, after David HaMelech, because that's what David HaMelech did, Keneged the Chamishichim Shetar, he turned it into tefillah. But in a very literal way, the Rebbe says you got to take what you learned and bring it into davening, and that's what we should be doing. We come to davening right after we finish learning. It should show up in our tefillah, in one way or another. Help me fulfill this. I want this. I want to be connected to this. I need this. I'm desperate for this. To turn it into tefillah. But if you what we're saying now, Torah is the four corners, tefillah is the circular, and me'ar barucha is to bring it by haruach. Gorgeous. Soiviv ha'ilech haruach. Nichna talis de klipa. That's getting rid of the klipa de talis, bechinas haruach de klipa v'zeu, and that's why the pasuk in Eiv, referring to the destruction of all rishus in the world, says le'echais bekanfos haaretz, to take hold of the four corners of the earth, v'yanaru rishayim imena, to shake off the rishayim. Kehal Yedidim arba kanafos. That's telling us how do you get rid of the rishayim, v'yanaru rishayim. How do you not get rid of them, like destroy them? Right? It's the sin and not the sinner. Or not. The point is to dismantle their reliance on the fake oxygen and to give them real ruach chaim. Right? That's the point. Is going to be me'ar baruchas le'echas bekanfos haaretz. That's the bechina of the talis. Bechina of tzitzis, shebechinas ruach chaim v'kedusha, shebechinas arba rashim hanal, which go back to the four letters Yud Kei Vav Kei Umisham Yipared, right, which will help us to remove ourselves from the rishayim after us enabling ourselves to connect to the four rashim, which is v'hayala arba rashim, which is Yud Kei Vav Kei. That was the result of a nahar yotzei me'eden. That's the hashkas hasagan, right? That's a result of that. Al Yadam V'Yinaru Rishayim B'chinas Mashpor Rishayim Ade Aretz. That's the aspect of getting rid of the rishos, which is the concept of Rosh Hashanah Eish Ruach Mayim Ba'afar Pile Plaim V'zeh Perish, and we carry on and we continue. V'zeh Perish Amar Abba Barachana Amar Le'ahutaya. There was this, like the Rashbam tells us, the Sefer Yishmael. It was all in dialogue with the Palestinians. No, I mean maybe this is a very deep hint to the some kind of dialogue, don't know, but Sefer Yishmael, right, he was having some kind of conversation with the Sefer Yishmael the whole time, right, this Taya, and he told him Tava achvele meisi midbar. He says, come and I will show you the dead of the midbar, right? We know that the whole dar of the midbar died out, right, before they could get into Eretz Yisrael. That whole dar was not socha, right? And so he said, let me show you these bodies. I went with him and I saw it looked like drunkards. They were laying on their backs facing upwards, and one of their knees was folded up, right? Like he wasn't laying with both of his legs flat on the ground. One of his knees was standing up. And he said this Arab traveled underneath this. It was like a tunnel, right? This folded up knee, and he was riding on a camel, and he was holding up. It was a kifa rumcha. He was holding up his spear. So that's a very, very tall thing, right? He was on a camel, it's already tall, and he was holding up the spear, and he didn't even touch the inside of the knee, right? He's trying to say they were giants. He said, I cut off. Said Rabbi Barbachana, I cut off one of the edges of the talus of one of them, and this is in the context, right, of showing, let's learn the halacha from them of Hilchas Tzitzis. So I cut off one of their tzitzis, and then we couldn't leave. We were trapped there. He said, maybe you took something from here, that's why we can't leave. Because we learned whoever takes anything from here, you're frozen. You cannot leave. You can't touch it. It has to remain untouched. Azli, I went. Ahadarte, ahadarte, I returned it. V'ahadam estagalon, and then we were able to leave that place. Let's just take a quick look at the Rashbam. Taya Soichi Yishmal. That's the Arab merchant. Azli va'achazisi v'dam k'madim b'masmei. They looked like they were drunk. Shayushaych v'im befanim tzuhuvos, because they had red faces, k'shesuyei yayin, like those who drink wine. Aparkid panim lamala. They were laying aparkid, which is their backs on the ground and their face were facing upward. And the Arab was traveling underneath its knee. He was traveling under the lifted knee of the dead body. And he was traveling on a camel, and his spear was lifted up in his hand. Right, and he didn't touch the inside of the knee. Right, and Rabbi Baruch Hana said, I wanted to prove from there something with regard to Hilchas Tzitzis, and they didn't let us leave. That the animals were stuck; they were firmly implanted; they couldn't leave. Says the Heilige Rebbe Nachman, what does this mean in the context of Torah? Let me show you the dead of the Midbar. He said, let me show you what it looks like to live a life out of connection with the Ruach Chaim of the Tzadikim Meisei Midbar. This is the aspect of the dead. By the Gemara Nivama says there was no Ruach Tzvainis blowing in the Midbar, and the Ruach Tzvainis is the Ruach of the Tzadik, and it's Tzvainis because it's Tzaf and Belev, right? And it's the aspect of the wind, of the Ruach of the Torah, that's Merachav Esapanei Hamayim, which is the aspect of the Torah, that is the aspect of the 5 strings of David HaMelech's harp, upon which the Ruach was blowing. They don't have any Ruach Chaim of Kedusha. Right? Because the whole thing was really Pegam and Moshe Rabbeinu the whole time, every complaint, and the Meraglim. It was all of Begida and Moshe. They had no Emunas Chachamim. Why couldn't they have listened to Moshe Rabbeinu? Why couldn't they have followed what Moshe Rabbeinu was telling them? And so really it all came from the deep standpoint of an oppositional force, right, to the Ruach of the Tzaddik. That Ruach Tzvainis that's blowing upon the strings of David HaMelech's harp. These Rishayim that are not connected to Tzadikim, and therefore they draw the vitality from a Ruach to Sitra Achra that looks very powerful, Takif Levisha, but it isn't sustainable, and it leads to terrible dysfunction in a person's life. And they are called dead, right? So they're Meisei Midbar. They're in the Midbar without Ruach Tzvainis, like the Gemara Givamis tells us, and they're Meisei because Afil Rishayim, Afil B'chayayim are Kriya Meisim. And how are we going to help these people? How are we going to fix the Meisei Midbar? Right? Because it's all metaphorical, right? It's not like to bring them back to life. How are we going to help the Levitic people who are Meisei Midbar, or is the Bechina of Meisei Midbar? So he showed him Perish Rabbeinu Shmuel. You know what the issue was? Their faces were tzuhuvim, they were red. That's why their faces were all red. Shuha Rav de Klipa, because they were connected to the Rav of the other side. And it didn't come from a place of gentleness, and it didn't come from a place of love and compassion, and it didn't come from a place of humility, and it didn't come from a place of goodwill, and it didn't come from a place. It came from a place of everything that's the opposite of that, every kind of unhealth and dysfunction. And that's what it means that they were laying on their back, looking up. Their face was above. Peneihem, we already said. What's the essence of a person's face? The Gemara told us in Givamis. The nose, right? The nose. Peneihem zebechinas haruach. That's the aspect of ruach, because ruach hapenu, the aspect of the af, hakaras peneihem, like we said, that's how you recognize a person by their nose. V'hainu lamala. And so their ruach was lamala. Meaning, not just their faces were facing upward, but their whole face was upward. Ki haruach shalahem gadol lefisha. Their ruach, the ruach of the Risham of the Meisei Midbar, that are all red, the aspect of Esav, they're lamala. They have a tremendous mala, because their ruach chaim is takiv levisha, it's a ruach sar, it's a hurricane, it's not a gentle breeze. It's the inyan of the cedar tree, it's mighty, but it doesn't have the resilience of the reed. When the ruach comes and blows it down, it's blown down. Right? It doesn't have that resilience, but it looks very powerful. The aspect of all the tzairav are yafiach, right? The aspect of the powerful energy of the Rishayim. One of their knees was uplifted. This aspect of wow, they were so successful. The great success. Now, why is it that a lifted up knee is the aspect of the success of the tzaddikim? Says the Rebbe, because lifted up knee is the opposite of a weakened knee. A weakened knee is always a reference to failure, right? Birkaim koshles, right? A person has weak knees, their knees are shaking, they fall over. So over here, ugva birke, meaning their knees were lifted up, meaning this is the aspect of Paneim Lamala, of the Ruach Sa'ara, of this very strong, incredible manifestation of what appears to be vitality, but it's the Bechina, like Reb Eli so beautifully and not guessingly said last time. It's the aspect of, which is the aspect of the Chen Ha'amiti, and not Chas V'Shalom the Chen Shel Sheker, right? And that MS, which is eternal. And Netzach Yisrael lo yishaker ukva birkei rum hatzlacha. They were succeeding. Va'ayil taya to say birkei. And the tzaddik traveled underneath this knee. Hainu tzaddik shu nikra taya, which is mamish the taya, the soicher yishmal is an aspect of the tzaddik. K'may shapirish Rashi b'chol makam soicher yishmael. Why soicher yishmael? Because soicher b'chinas haruach. Because Seicher is this aspect of the Ruach, Kamesha Kasav, Soiviv, Hailach HaRuach. And what does Seicher mean? It can mean a merchant, but we learned already in Torah Zayin, it could also mean Sechar. Sechar is the Targum of Saviv. Zer Zahav Saviv, right? Zahav Saviv, look in the Targum, Sechar. So the Seicher Yishmal is the aspect of the Klalius. Hainu Atzadik Shemikav the Ruch Mekadusha V'zeo Seicher Yishmael. And that's why there's a connection between the Seicher, which is the aspect of Igulim, and Yishmael, right, which is the aspect of prayer. Al Shem Ki Shama Hashem Al Anyech. Ki Atzadik Shemea Kol Anacha Shal Advekim Boy. The Tzadik hears the anachas of a person that's connected to him. A person sighs, the tzaddik hears it, because the tzaddik is the roish, and the roish is the brain. It feels all the input from all the different aspects of the nervous system throughout the entire body, and the tzaddik feels it. The tzaddik feels the pain. He feels the pain. Because the tzaddik is the source for the ruach chaim of every person. He has the ruach, so that's the tzaddik. Va'ayil taya toise birkei. Ki rachiv gamla, while he's riding on a camel, b'chinas goimel nafshe ish chesed, the aspect of chesed, goimel, ashir l'Hashem ki gamal alai, right? Goimel nafshe, gamal is the aspect of chesed. Ze b'chinas rav chesed, that's counteracting the panim suhuvas, the red face, the aspect of Esav, the admaini. Uzikiv rumcha, and he was holding a rumcha. What's the aspect of rumcha? Says the Rebbe, simple, rumcha ub'chinas ruach mem. Roimach, right, is the letters ruach mem. Bechinas v'ruach alekim mirachefes v'ruach mirachefes al panei hamayim. Ruach mem is roimach. Ruach mirachefes. He was holding a ruach mirachefes, and this is the aspect of mayim hainu hatayra. This is the aspect of the Torah. Shenitana la'arba yamim, which was given in 40 days. La'arba yamim, which is the aspect, of course, of the Mem Sofit, which is the Bechina of a square, which is the Bechina of the Talis, which is the aspect of Harabayas. Which is the aspect of Har Sinai, which is the aspect of Limanat Torah, which is the aspect of the Gan. Shenitna la'arba im yoim. So that's the Ruach Mem. That's the Ruach that comes from the Torah. Sheshama Ruach Chaim k'niskala kolam shat tzaddik hoyle b'chinas haruach shemekabel me'atar. The tzaddik had this aspect of the Ruach Chaim that he received from the Torah. V'im kol zeh nachis tchois birkei tachas atzlachas harasha b'chinas kaval harasha tzaddik mimenu. But it wasn't simple. He was still underneath the knee of the tzaddik, meaning he wasn't able to help this rasha. He was still underneath the birkaim koishleis. The opposite of birkaim koishleis. The rasha, the ruach was still takav levisha. So he tried to help this rasha. He tried to help this Meis Midbar, and he cut off one of the corners of the tzitzis, meaning he tried to counteract using the aspect of tzitzis, one of the four midas, so the four edges of the aspect of the talis of the kulit tcheles, the tchelta, right, or the aspect of the talis of Esa, which is admaini, gevura. He cut off one of their tzitzis, which is Eish Rachmaim Afar, which is not V'haya la'arba rashim, which is Yud Kevav la'arba rashim. No, it's very low. He broke one of their midas rois. Because all of the midas rois, like we said, come from one of these four yisodos. Shesharsham arba tzitzis canal. That's where the tzitzis is their shirish Yud Kevav K. And guess what? V'lay mistaglan. It didn't help. Even though it didn't let him get underneath the birkayim, it didn't let him get through this taya, this soichir shmal. It didn't work. He shattered. He gave the Rosh Musar. He yelled and he shouted and he screamed about it. That come forth from these four yisodos that are rooted in the arba tzitzis, that they cut off one of these four aspects, but you couldn't get out, and the animal wasn't moving anymore. They were unsuccessful. Why were they unsuccessful? Amarli, so the Sefer Yishmael said, Dilma Shaklis Midi Minayu. So what we learned is that this in and of itself is the reference to the fact that he tried to cut off the edge of the tzitzis and take it. Right? And that was the thing that he was trying to take. Over here it's much deeper. Dilma Shaklis Midi Minayu. Hainu Shema Yesh Lecha Echad Me'arbi Yisayda Shalei Tikanta B'Shleimus Lahafra Mimeno Hara Lagamri. Could it be that you're not a tzaddik gamur? Maybe you yourself have one of these four negative midas. That's why we're not moving. If that individual has in and of his or her own self this aspect of one of the midas rise, not going to work. Maybe you have something that you have from these midas. Maybe you have a hole in one of these four midas. That you're connected to one of the midas rise in their taivas, and that's why it's not working. That's why we're not able to help them leave their own inyan misham parade. Because we said that we learned that anybody who has one of these midas, he's a tzaddik she'ena gamur, is not going to work. We have this as a tradition. A person is connected to one of these things, that he has some kind of connection with the midas rise, is unable to completely subjugate this rasha. Asli, says Rebbe Barbachana, no issue. I went ahadarte and I returned it. And says the Rebbe, what does it mean you returned it? What al pi pshat, it means he put it back. But ahadarte, of course, is a reference to tshuva, which also means to return. He did tshuva ahadarte. I returned myself. Not I returned it. I did tshuva on that. I removed myself from it. I worked on myself. And then it worked. Then we were able to subjugate the Rasha. We were able to replace his supply of oxygen with real air. We were able to take him off of that ruach, that's takif lefisha, that ruach sa'ar of addiction, of whatever it is that he was connected to, drawing his vitality from a place that's not a place of vitality. And we were able to plug him back into true amuna amitis. Shalahem legamri a tzaddik gamor hu yachalatzis mehem ulachniam ulashbilam bebechinas mashpul sham adei aretz Rosh Hashanah Eish Rachmaim Afar, and all because he had the nahar, which is Torah that was that was Yotzei Me'ed in the aspect of Tefillah Hashkas as a gam the Torah umisham yipared, and from there we're able to split off from the four aspects of Eish Rachmaim Afar, because v'haya yud kevav ke la'arba rashim, and to reconnect him to the essence of existence, so he's plugged into the truth, to the ms shel to the chen ha'amiti, and not chas v'shalom the inyan of sheker ha'chen. Ashreinu ma'tov chalkeinu u'manoyim g'aleinu ma'yafi v'shisim
ואתה האב שלי שכל כך אוהב אותי, האב שלי מלך חי וקיים על כל נשימה שאני